levels of profitability that are pertaining to the sector, there's significant scope for growth. ARPUs are about $25 compared to an African average of less than $10. So, that in effect is one of the sectors that you've highlighted as being a growth industry. We totally concur with that. The banking sector has seen several new players. The most recent is Standard. Interesting to note, ABSA's re-entry into, or intended re-entry into Angola, as well as Investec, who also have plans to open up an office. There are local players who will also be entering the Angolan banking space. There's a bank called Valor Banco, one of the probably 10 who are awaiting licenses. And we see there being more growth potential going forward, largely as a result of the low banking penetration levels from a commercial banking point of view, at probably less than 20, maybe 15% of the population being banked. But not only that, there will be significant changes to the legislative environment. Most significantly, with regards to the oil sector, there is an intention to divert oil revenues or channel oil revenues through the local banking sector. And with regards to that, the government needs to really beef up the capacity, the local banking capacity. EcoBank will also be opening up, getting a license soon. So massive potential in the banking sector. We don't have the stressed debt problems that we had in Nigeria, for example. The problems they had with margin lending don't exist, mostly because there is no lending. The only lending that is done is channeled specifically to related party projects. So the man on the street, the small to medium business enterprise, typically can't actually access lines of credit through local banks because there's a shocking imperative to sort of focus on the areas of growth that are steered by the state. Another really important thing to note is probably the most significant thing that's happened is the crashing of the oil price. And with that, I think that's a very good thing to happen because Angola had gone ahead of itself, not only as far as taking on projects that needed financing, but in sort of maintaining the ideology that they should control those projects, from start to finish and control the profits. I think now there is an acceptance that the companies that are in the Sonangol group, but not only Sonangol, vested companies, if you like, have grown to an extent whereby they need external levels of finance. And I think that will precipitate the opening up of the economy and channeling in of further lines of credit, be it through bond markets, be it through greater activity in capital markets. But we will see that because the fact of the matter is Sonangol cannot finance everything, which to date it has been, more or less. So there is a specific need for capital to grow the local economy, and I think that will happen.
Fine. Thank you. I think that's great. Leave it there for now. And if we could finally move on to Miguel Vieira, Managing Director of Elite International Careers.
First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. It's great to see such interest from South African possible investors, entrepreneurs, companies, individuals wanting to go to Angola. Just a little bit of background. Elite International Career as a company, we are a London-based international recruitment consultancy, and we specialize in providing recruitment services for emerging markets, Angola being one of them. And if I'm fully honest with you, it is our major market. Our core business is providing Angolan human capital for all of these projects we're hearing about today. One of the things a lot of companies take for granted is obviously the process by which you need to find qualified workforce when you go into any market. Angola is no different than Portugal, South Africa, Brazil. You need to have qualified workforce if you want to set up a high-speed internet infrastructure, if you want to set up 20 retail chains across Angola. You do need that qualified workforce. Now, we come into the game when companies struggle to find middle management positions. Companies need to really take into account the fact that there is a very strong Angolanization movement, as Pedro Coelho mentioned. The government, the ministries are enforcing a very, very strict quota of 70-30 in terms of 70% of companies' workforce must be nationals, and only 30% of the workforce is allowed to be expat, of non-Angolan origin. And this is where companies really come to a real struggle. I was talking to our chairman a bit earlier on today. You know, as a recruitment company, we don't specialize in any particular industry. We work with a variety of different industries. And we have come across some very tough situations where our clients have had visas revoked for their, you know, managing directors, for their, you know, CEOs. You know, people who are who have been in Angola for the past 10, 15 years. You know, the Ministry of Petroleum, whatever ministry, you know, the company is operating under, simply revokes the visa. Now, this doesn't just happen from night to day. One thing that must also be said is the fact that companies have been told over the past 10, 15, 20 years that, yes, we will allow you to have an expat visa for X number of employees, but in due course, you need to train Angolans so that they can then occupy those positions. Now, this, needless to say, hasn't always happened. And companies are now facing real difficulties in, you know, replacing the expat who's been there for X number of years with a qualified Angolan, because they haven't followed the shadow process which had been recommended by the relevant minister. So, you know, these are issues that really any company going into Angola, when looking at, you know, doing your due diligence, obviously you need to look at pros, cons, you need to do your SWOT analysis, but really manpower, human capital, workforce requirements, needs, rules, regulations need to be looked at very carefully in order to avoid some difficult situations. Now, obviously, there are quite a lot of you know, agencies, solution providers, service providers in Angola who are able to find you, you know, a workforce that is, you know, that could potentially serve your needs. But again, as most of the panelists have been saying, you know, you should do your homework before you go in, follow the rules by the book, do your due diligence, and hopefully all of this is avoidable.